You unlock this benefit with the key of Patreon. Beyond is another dimension. A dimension of thought. A dimension of speculation. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both waffle and substance. Of things and ideas. You've just crossed into the podcast zone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back through Trekking Through the Twilight Zone. You might find that Julian and I are a little bit tired. We're a little bit Rip Van Winkle. And we're going to get 100 years of sleep now that we've stolen our sort of lump of gold. And that's it, but we are trekking through the Twilight Zone. And episode by episode going through that wonderful show. And we're at the episode The Rip Van Winkle Caper. A group of men steal... I'm going to have some real issues with this episode, by the way. They steal what is tantamount to, I think they say $1 million or $10 million worth
of gold, yeah.
$1 million, so piffling, $1 million worth of gold, because the heat is on.
$1 million.
Right. Yeah. Oh, we are so going to talk about Austin Powers in this episode, and some of the issues I have with this episode. They steal $1 million of gold, and in order to keep the heat off them, they enter some stasis chambers for 100 years to then come out in 2061, rich men apparently, with this $1 million worth of gold. It doesn't quite go that way. So let's talk about the Rip Van Winkle caper.
Well, I can already tell. I want us to fight about this because this is a great episode. This is a classic episode. I love this episode. I have some of these problems with it that I will admit. On the other hand, this sticks in the mind, and this is, sort of indisputably one of the most famous sort of weird Twilight Zone episodes that I think works and is memorable.
Okay.
So let's put on the boxing gloves, my friend.
Okay. I'll go the other way because I'm new to this. Obviously, I'm the newbie going through these episodes. I thought this was possibly one of the dumbest episodes of we've watched so far. This made me laugh out loud. This professor, I'm going to start with all the things. So we've got a professor. So that basically these guys have stolen this gold. It's in the back of a truck. They're all a bunch of crooks. It's various reservoir dogs. They don't all trust each other for different purposes. They're all coming. They've all got a plan and all sorts of stuff. The heat's on them, and so because they've stolen this gold from traveling to Fort Knox. Very Goldfinger. We will get to Austin Powers. And then, so the idea is to go into these sleep chambers for 100 years. Right. Firstly, this professor, 100 years, he seems to say arbitrarily. This professor, clearly not a professor of economics, because at one point he says we should wake up incredibly rich men, and I'm not an economics professor. I'm not hugely versed in economics. We're now going through a cost of living crisis, though. I understand what inflation is. I understand that the value of gold drops and goes up and down and stuff. But in general, it's not. We've had the gold standard, but it's not as stable as I think it would suggest. So this idea of $1 million worth of gold. Just this idea of it being $1 million seems baffling to me, like ridiculous, because it should be. There's no mention of actually the value of gold will increase over time, so actually this could be worth millions in the future. There's no sort of emphasis of actually $1 million in 100 years is probably not going to be worth a great deal. I don't know what the future will hold.
See, I totally disagree with this point.
Okay.
If I could just jump in real quick.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so first of all, $1 million, I have the data in front of me, was 9.1 million, in today or as of a couple of years ago. So, I mean, 4 people could comfortably live for the rest of their lives on, 9.1 million even
now.
Today.
But we've still got another 40 years to go. So,
so let's start there. Secondly, gold. You're right. While it fluctuates, right, it is a commodity that can be expected that people invest in. It's not a very good investment, by the way, today, but actually, it appreciates in value. So, it's in theory, the way you can think about it is, it's not that they have $1 million in cash that they're going to then say, all right, we're going to have $1 million in 100 years. they've got $1 million in real estate, right? Which is going to tend to appreciate in value. And in 100 years, that value that starts at 9.1 million can be expected to have at least kept up with inflation. So that would be my quick rebuttal.
Okay, I can accept that as an argument. But a dropped line in this would have easily sort of solved, because I was a bit like $1 million. And all I could think of was that moment in Austin Powers when sort of like his number two leans in and it's like $1 million isn't that much anymore. Like, and then it goes to $1 billion. Like, it felt like that number of like, we're gonna say 1 million because it's a lot. And then when we get to 2061, like I was like, yeah, it just, you know, you need to at least explain that like the monetary value of this gold isn't important. Its value will increase. In fact, the longer we stay asleep, the more this gold will be worth, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Have that as part of the plan.
Yeah, you're right. No,
the other thing,
I do want to say you're totally right about that line would have helped. It, on the other hand, you know, to your point, if you have created a suspended animation chamber,
yeah,
right, is this one of your points?
This is my second point.
Okay,
if you've invented this technology, why do you need to steal any money? Because clearly this is something you've gone, I've invented this technology that allows stasis to happen, and I'd be like, so firstly, you'd be doing it for the government, or you commercialize this, you sell it to something, like you'd be making millions if you trademark
this.
Millions, yeah, billions. But you'd be like, this is where the biggest problem for me. Like, this professor's created this technology,
yeah,
and has not commercialized it. Like, and it never comes back. Like, this is where I was like, oh, this technology is going to be a part of the twist at the end of this in some way. And it doesn't. It's just their conveyance to the future.
Right.
But so that was my first point. He's meant to be bright. He's created this. Now, I'm in two minds about this second point. They're glass chambers in a cave.
Yes. Yeah.
And so one of the members, this actually happens. They come out in the future, and there's this thing of like, we haven't changed, and the gas that they use has caused this stasis thing to happen. But then they find one that is shattered. The rock has fallen onto it, and it has aged him. So the gas has escaped, but he didn't come. So he died in this chamber, and sort of like you have this skeleton, this desiccated skeleton. Fine. But then I'm still going like, yeah, that was the first thing that reached my head, was like, this seems an incredibly dangerous environment to have 4 glass caskets. Like, why are these not in the back of another lorry because you've planted these, transported these things here. Why not have them all in the back of a lorry where they'd be safer? Like, there was just, I was just, yeah. That
okay, so I'm going to completely rebut this point. You know, so back to the first point, I wouldn't mind if they go to, you know, all right, it's 2061, and they go up and they're like, this is amazing, you know, what are these iced beverages? I'll have a Starbucks Frappuccino. And they're like, right, that'll be 2,600. They're like, okay. You know, you could go the comedic, you know, Austin Powers.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind inflation. That would be quite, yeah.
But so you're right that, you know, if you have this technology, the most amazing part of this story is not, in fact, the heist. It's this technology.
Yeah.
And of course, you're right. Having said that, you and I love pulpy nonsense plots, right? I mean, every single superhero plot, every single science fiction plot has some version of this problem, right?
Yes.
You know, you've got this amazing thing, you know, right? You've got a gem that transforms people into superheroes. What you're going to do, you know, how you're going to get people to adapt to your costume is not the coolest thing here. But, you know, we accept this as part of the, you know, pulpy. In fact, I'm thinking of like Time Bandits, and, you know, like, right. Yeah, you don't need to be stealing things. You have, you know, I mean, the most amazing thing here is not the hijinks. But that comes early on. That's like part of the premise, right? The glass cases, I have the same thought. And yet, here's my rebuttal to that. I mean, first, it's obviously there for the visual, right? It doesn't make sense. It's not like only glass can keep the special gas inside, right? Of course, it's daft. It's stupid. Right, just like Judge Anderson, with Judge Death inside her. Why does that need to be a glass case?
It's not. No, that's Boeing. That's different. Boeing is different.
But still, they've got a case to,
Yeah.
I mean, we do these things, and it's a bit daft, but it's a fun concept, and it doesn't need to not be glass. Well, and the other thing is, like, I have the same thought about, like, this is a dangerous environment. Having been through a lot of caves, like, I love going spelunking. You don't find rocks laying on the ground generally unless humans have knocked them down. Like, in the course of the 50,000 years that there's been a cave here, there might be a few rocks on the ground. There are occasional natural cave-ins, but it's pretty rare that, a rock just falls from the ceiling. So, granted, it's dumb that this is made out of glass, but, come on. I mean, it's
I'll tell you what it is.
1960s sci-fi.
Yeah, but no, I'll tell you what it is. And because it really bothered me, was this idea of sort of, like you say, the glass thing's all right. That's what you're saying. And I also get it has to be there for a visual. You have to see them in the caskets and all that kind of thing. Fine. But it's the fact that the writing on many of these episodes has been so inventive and tight that this sort of stuck out to me as being a bit of a head scratcher. Where I was like, well, other episodes have got around these sorts of things, or have done something unusual, or they've thought of this thing. Like there's usually a way of having it in a truck or having it, covered or something. So it just felt anomalous to me because because other episodes have been so. We picked on them for other things, but this just felt so oddly out there as being so obvious. And it became sort of like this became like that thing of that build up. I was like, right, well, your money thing doesn't seem to make it's sort of all right. That's what you're saying, but like it doesn't make a massive sense to me. I think there's better ways of doing it. The thing is,
you can go to Canada or Mexico, right? You don't need to go 100 years.
That was my other thing as well, because they're like, oh, we're hidden. I was like, you're not hidden. You've literally just driven through a desert in a truck that's left. The tire track. I see the tire tracks on in the episode. Like you're going to be how don't just instantly get in these caskets. Like you've got to have this thing like, right, let's make sure we're safe here first. And then we'll sort of like, become incredibly vulnerable for the next 100 years. And so there was that element as well of like, this is incredibly vulnerable. Like, why do the police not just turn up? Like that would be an even better episode. Like the gold's gone. There's just a post-it note from the police from 1960 that just like, there you go. Yeah, we took the gold. We left you here.
Good luck in the future, douchebags.
Oh yeah, they come out of their stasis chambers in a prison cell. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so look, they've driven from Fort Knox to LA. They're outside LA. I mean, presumably they've thrown off the heat. And yeah, you're right. I mean, this is all sort of daft setup, but it's part of the setup. And I'm not sure that we would bat our eyelashes if, let's say, they were actually from 2061 and, like, all right, we got a time machine. What are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to go 100 years ago and use our technology to steal some gold. We'd be like, yeah, this is kind of daft and stupid, but whatever. I'll go along with it.
Well, yeah, but what I would probably say is if you were going to have that, maybe you'd be like, what resource? Right. We're going to go back to 1961. I'm going to steal like 3 barrels of oil. Or
clean water.
We're gonna go back and buy, or I'm gonna steal bottles of water from a local supermarket and bring that to the future. Like that would be that's what the time travel one. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But the thing is, this whole setup was chipping away at me to this point where I was like, all right. So when they come round and everything's there. And I know there's a TV show. I know it's a pulpy plot, and I fully accept that. I know cars that haven't worked after 3 years.
Oh yeah. No, that's true.
And also, petrol and diesel both loses its combustion within about a year. So when the van starts, I was just like, oh God, like it's just it was. I know it's daft. I know I'm really nitpicking, but I think by this point I was so off track on this episode. But yes.
Yeah, well, this is the issue when we watch these shows. I mean, I often find that both of us, and sometimes we disagree, but I find that when I'm watching stuff, there is this sort of like, how much am I accepting this? And then, you have certain things that kind of throw you out of it, and those can kind of springboard off of each other until you get to this point where you're like, oh God, I'm groaning at everything. And what's interesting is those aren't always the same for both of us. We tend to agree on all the points, but what throws us out is not necessarily. I mean, for me, like you see, one of the four has not survived. I love watching them sort of recover, and it's like, oh, this didn't work.
Yes.
It still looks the same outside. I dig that stuff. It does, oddly, I'm kind of more bothered by the skeleton looking like a prop of the guy who's died. But it's still cool. I'm still like, oh, this is cool.
I agree with that. That's the one moment I kind of like, when there is that argument. And I was wondering, like, are we going to get, an easy one would have been they wake up and they enter the same episode as we had Burgess Meredith in from the sort of, in season 1. Like, it's, it was a desert, but now it's like an apocalyptic wasteland or something like that. Like, that's the easy answer. And they didn't do that. So I like the fact that obviously they lose the car because there's the mistrust between the van. Sorry. Again, someone has to explain that to me. Did he drive over the cliff on purpose with the brakes cut?
This is one of the things that supposedly the brakes fail, but he clearly is running somebody down with the truck, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. DeCruz, who's sort of the villain of the piece, I mean, all right, so the fun of this episode, or the premise of this episode, is, right, they go into the future and then watch greed tear the gang apart, right? It's really a very conventional post-bank robbery, movie or plot. But DeCruz just goes full-on evil so fast.
Yes.
That, like he's running somebody down. Yeah, and there does seem to be this ambiguity of, like, did he mean to? Did the brakes really fail? Why, it's hard to believe him, but why would he do this and strand himself in the desert? I do think some dialogue could have cleared that up. Yes. I agree that's a pretty big way it could be improved.
Yeah. And so they do end up walking through, and but this is where, like you say, the evil takes into it. He has the water. He's like, well, for every mouthful, it's like a bar of gold or something. So, and I kind of get that. And there is one conversation where that I kind of like, when he sort of he's asked. He sort of says to him, he says, well, why a bar of gold? He says, well, that's the price today. Tomorrow could be 2 bars, 3 bars. I don't know, but today it's a bar. So like 1 bar. So feel lucky that that's all I'm asking for. And I kind of like that dialogue. I thought that was one sort of moment. I was like, oh, okay. You've almost pulled me back in with that scene of how sort of like deliciously evil that conversation is, and how the power dynamics are shifting.
And also pro-capitalist, right? Like, hey, he's like, it's a free market economy,
Yeah, completely. So all that's working. And then obviously, he dies and he gets to the end. And so what are your thoughts on the end of this episode, this twist, this alchemist ending that happens?
No, I mean, I like it fine. It's a classic twist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be some twist. Obviously, you and I both had the suspicion, like, and I've seen it before, but I still feel that sense of, like, well, this could be an apocalyptic world, right? There's no place to spend your money. Because this is all destroyed. There's no humans who want gold. But the twist is that, they've learned how to manufacture gold. So, right, that's the twist at the end. You've sacrificed everything for greed, and this particular form of greed doesn't exist in the future. It is sort of Star Trek-esque in that sense, right? Like, they've manufactured gold. We don't know that they have no money, but you could imagine if these guys wind up meeting Captain Kirk, they're like, oh yeah, we could just manufacture this stuff. There's no money.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. again, logically, you're right. How are you synthesizing gold? We
Yeah.
don't know. It's not important.
No. The thing that bothered me about the ending there that was a little bit, because again I do like this idea that, like you say, they get there and all of a sudden gold is worthless because they can now manufacture it. We can create it. That's fine. I'm happy with that. It's almost like the callousness with how offhand these two people that find the guy sort of like crawling on the floor, and he's just like, I've got gold, save me, I've got gold, and they're just sort of like, whatever, you bum, sort of like, it sort of feels so sort of like, and then he's just like, oh well, we'll tell the authorities when we get to the next town. I don't know, it just felt so sort of like slightly callous, which sort of just thought was odd to the whole thing.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, it seems to me like what we have to assume is they pulled over in the desert. Here's this guy, and they assume he's been walking in the desert. He's crazy. He's saying, I'll give you gold, right? Obviously, like there's something wrong with this guy, and he died in front of me. Yeah, even him having some reaction to having watched a man die might be nice, but who knows? Maybe he's on that, Brave New World sort of happy drug. I don't know. You're right. It is, the tone is a little weird there, but I do love the progression of. I mean, Farwell, the scientist, is seen as orchestrating the whole plot. Right? It's his suspended animation technology, and we sort of know. I mean, like with most Twilight Zones, we know how this is going to go. They're going to attack each other. But I love that he. De Cruz is such a baddie, bad, and Farwell gets the chance, and I think pretty cunningly done, to hit him and beat him over the head with a gold bar and beat him to death, crushing his skull. I mean, I'd like if they showed a little more, but it's 1961. And then he cries. He weeps on the side of the road. I thought that was really well done. And then at the end, to drop this one gold bar just from exhaustion, and have one left that he's begging somebody to take to basically give him. I mean, all right, it's a conventional plot. We all know greed is going to destroy this gang, and he's going to keep losing gold bars. But I do think it works out well for me. Other problems?
No, I think, like I say, it's fine. The ending sort of is that bit you're right with. You are fine with that bit. That mid bit in the desert is actually probably the best bit for me. That bit where they are walking is probably the bit that I think works the best. But as a final thought, I don't know. There was, like you said, you're right about what you said before. There are sometimes things that just throw you off to such an extent that it's hard to be pulled back in. And I think that the setup for this episode literally made me chuckle. Like a few times, like I sort of not like ha, but like I had a smirk on my face and sort of a sly chuckle. This pushed me out to an extent that I was almost like, I can't accept anything else that's going to happen with this episode. So to know that this is sometimes considered a classic, I was a bit surprised, but it's not. This is not one for me. This one sort of. Maybe if I went back and rewatched it with some things in mind, fine. But
yeah, well, I mean, I don't. This was not. I mean, this was written by Serling. Yeah, I don't know. I did like one little thing that I liked is that they don't really explain the setup as much as they should, right? I think that a lot of dialogue, a lot of these problems could be fixed by dialogue or at least ameliorated. But there is a really cool moment after they wake up where they leave the cave, and I've had the same thought. Like, you see a shot of the cave from a distance, and it's like they've broken down, disposed of the truck. But you're thinking, how are they doing that? Like, how are they not going to be spotted over 100 years? What if there's a town like right outside this cave? But when you see them leave the cave, they open an artificial door. And it's like, oh, that's quite cool. They've had the foresight to make a sort of like fake cave wall to prevent from being discovered. And I thought, all right, I can go along with this. That's quite cool. But a line of dialogue would have made that stuff better. And I'm not saying this doesn't have these absolutely daft elements. We could see a million stories of the Twilight Zone doing suspended animation and just going in different directions that were all sort of amusing and interesting. It chose to go in the direction of that's how you get away from the law. See,
Yeah.
The heat's on. See,
yeah.
I can hear the pain.
No, it's yeah. Just even saying that, sort of like, it sort of feels so. One of the things I will say as a final thought is this episode feels almost out of time in and of itself. The whole premise of everything sort of like, it feels almost like from an earlier period in this sort of like sci-fi pulpy TV show. Like I'd expect this from maybe a decade before, or something like that. Like it just sort of feel, I don't know. This idea of sort of the stasis and like I say, the evil must have like an evil lair. Like I've built these doors that look like rock. Cool, it is. It's a great idea. It's just there's a silliness to it that I'm just a bit. I'm struggling with, to be honest.
Too Dr. Evil.
Yeah, exactly that. Like this whole thing of like exactly $1 million and all this other stuff. It felt too considered for this sort of whole thing. I'm like, and I'm going like, but all I can think of, if this is that well set, it's this thing we say, like the thing is, this whole flaw exists in all these mediums. It exists in comics. If you've got Doctor Doom or some, these evil geniuses, yeah, they're all going to be super rich because they're all geniuses that can make stuff. They might be evil, but we have evil people involved in like leading companies now. They don't try to take over the world. They just like being rich. And so it's the same with this. I'm like, why is this not? Why is he not just copyrighting this technology and then selling it off?
Well, I mean, this is no more daft than saying I have figured out how to make a suit that makes me fly.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do is, these jets, forget giant rockets, right? This is going to transform the world in 1,000 different ways, but what it's going to be used for is to make me fly around and zap dragons and shit.
Yeah.
I'm Iron Man. Whoop-de-doo. That is the most stupid idea imaginable. And that's way more stupid than this, I would dare say, by, not an order of magnitude, but a few times. And yet I'm totally willing to accept it because it's the bizarre sort of, premise of a pulpy sort of thing. I think you're right in all of your complaints. I do think that this is rooted in some of the caper, the sort of gold heist, stuff of an earlier era where you're just willing to accept that because we've seen that stuff before. Yeah, we stole the gold. How do we get away? And then in the sort of Rip Van Winkle story, right, putting a sci-fi twist on that. And then the idea of, you don't know what the future is going to hold. So, all that stuff I like. I think it's fun. It works for me. I guess the one thing I will say is, do you recognize the car that pulls up?
No. What is it?
That is slightly modified, but it's from Forbidden Planet yet again.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, Forbidden Planet. Win one. See, I can't not like an episode that steals from Forbidden Planet. You know me.
Yes, that's a very good point. Anyway, any final thoughts for the Rip Van Winkle caper?
Oh no, I think I've said my piece.
Okay, I think I shall leave it there as well. I think the listeners get my position on this. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much as always for joining us on our trek through the Twilight Zone. And I hope you're enjoying it all. And we shall see you on the next episode.